Well, hello and welcome to wherever you are in the world. We are here. My name is Marie-Louise Muir, and I am with the celebrated ceramic artist Kate Malone MBE. And I'm going to give you the MBE because you've worked bloody hard to get those three initials after your name. Kate is one of the UK's leading ceramic artists with an illustrious career spanning over 30 years. She started when she was very young. They'll give you, don't add decades. And she has an unmistakable and highly regarded style. Anybody who is watching this and is a fan of Kate's work will completely understand when they see her unique handmade pots and intricately ornamented sculptures. Observations of nature, particularly fruits, nuts, and berries, are the overriding influence in your work. And the sophistication of her glazes has led to some interesting collaborations with prominent architects and designers. And we're going to speak more about that later. But for the moment, I'm going to let you see some of Kate's work as it goes up on screen. And it's this quality of work, Kate, and the diverse nature of it that has led you to not only be an acclaimed artist, but they've even got you as a presenter on the Great Pottery Throwdown. And you're also very much a mentor as well. So for the next half an hour, you and I are going to chat about the career that you have, how you got into it, and why you continue to do it. So, hello.
Hello.
You are in as well your actual creative space.
Here it is behind me. Yes, no, I'm so pleased to see you all. Well, I can't see you all, but I can see Marie-Louise, and I'm presuming you're all out there. So I'm just going to ask you all, no matter where you are, and I've been doing this on the Zoom things that we've been doing during this very challenging time, is for you all to shout out the words, hooray for clay. So on three, no matter where you are in the world, I want you all to shout it out. I don't care if people think you're being rather silly, but I'm going to do it as well. So it's after three, hooray for clay. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3.
Hooray for clay! So, yes, I hope I haven't disturbed my dog. So it is very much, Kate, it is very much hooray for clay. Let's talk about that. Let's explore what that means to you.
Yes, well, essentially, as a child, you talk to children and you talk about magic fairies and you talk about magic. But actually, we witness magic in physics and science and nature every single day. A blade of grass growing, a flower growing from a seed, or an apple coming from a tree. It's just such a miracle. And in fact, clay is this incredible thing. It's being made by the planet now as we speak. There's more clay being made every day than we can ever use. It might not be where we want it or when we want it or the type that we want, but it's actually this great machine. And it's really brother and sister to glass and stone. And then when you make it and you get it out and you clean it and you make things with it, and there are so many applications, you then fire it in a kiln and you transform clay into ceramics. That's a different material. So you're witnessing a material change, and if you're making something, you're involved with that. So you go from soft, squidgy to solid, hard. The oldest clay evidence is 25,000 years ago. So you're making something, or you're involved in the making of something that's very, very, very timeless. And also potters who worked 300 years ago, 3,000 years ago, 25,000 years ago, their fingerprints are still evident. And so you're part of this great continuum, actually. Whether you're a potter who enjoys something in a night class and makes the tiniest and simplest thing, to somebody who makes things of great complexity, and the great potters throughout time, the makers of Sèvres and Meissen and Eureka, and you communicate across time. The things that I made are going to last a lot longer than I am, sadly, because I quite like to live forever because I'm having a lot of fun. But essentially, I am in love with the transformation and the sense of being part of a continuum. Is that good enough?
I love that. I think that is a pretty good first answer. Where did this all begin? Where did Kate Malone, hooray for clay, where did that love come from?
Well, my earliest memories, I think, are at primary school, where we might have just played with some kind of putty or plasticine, and we were told to make cupcakes. But that's very early, and I can only put my finger on it like an elusive dream. But essentially, I was at a big, very progressive, comprehensive school in the 70s. And there was a great Education Act in 1969 that made art education, ensured that it was as much a part of the timetable as sciences and histories, etc., and the 3 arts. And so at this great, rough, comprehensive school, I didn't realize it. I thought everybody had it. And in fact, in England and in Great Britain, and I think in all the sort of schools, they had great art departments. And we all did metalwork, woodwork, sewing, cooking, pottery. So to me, I had a go at everything, and I just fell in love. Well, the pottery teacher was very sort of dishy and bohemian and different person, like I hadn't seen. Came from quite a normal family, and he was always dusty and kind of different. And I just saw this pottery room. I saw all these jars on the shelves, and I have shelves much like that now with copper and cobalt and iron, and I didn't know what it was. And I literally thought, I want some of that. And then I had to wait a year, went into the E-block under the stairs, made some pieces, and in fact the pieces are quite similar to the things that I make now, which is very funny. I was very shocked when I saw the pieces my grandma had on her shelves. I started, and it's just never ended. This sense of wonder when you open the kiln, the sense of wonder at the transformations that I've spoken about. And I know a lot of you watching, I suspect you're all makers, or hopefully you're going to have a go if I can persuade you. It is a lovely, beautiful thing, and it's like a meditation, and it's like centering, and you connect with an element. And these days, it's quite easy to get very detached from the elements.
We are talking, obviously, at a remove from one another, and in these extraordinary times, we are joined by people watching from all around the world, and you're all so welcome to this. Lockdown has been a terrible thing, but there was also these little creative energies, little movements that happened throughout it, and people escaping into creative activities, including making things. What place do you feel, Kate, that craft has in our everyday lives?
Well, I mean, I was just drinking a cup of tea, and in fact, it's a cup, and I designed them. They're made in Stoke-on-Trent of bone china, and I design them about every 18 months, and I give them to friends and sometimes sell them. But essentially, it's because you kiss a cup when you drink from it. So it's very selfish for me to give away gifts that I know every morning my friends are kissing. It's essentially, if we can improve our life by beautifully crafted things, and that's not expensive sort of upper class things. It can be the way you decide on what cup you drink your tea from, or your key ring. You carry your keys around every day with you, but you can have a beautiful thing, be it a cheap beautiful thing or an expensive beautiful thing. So I think craft, craft is two things. Craft are tangible things, but there's also the craft of ironing, and the craft of making your bed, and the craft of making cooking. And so really, craft is about doing, isn't it? I think work is an expression of love. And so if you use beautiful things in your life, then you feel that love, really. And that's what it's all about, especially now. This lockdown obviously has its challenges, and it's horrific. And we have to try and make the most of everything. And I hope that people out there are turning to sewing or cooking or crafting, whatever they do. I'm such a chatterbox. I'm sorry, Marie-Louise, I'm not getting
I'm loving it. Don't you worry at all. I should say as well, thank you for being the first for us, because this is a weekly craft and conversation series with myself, part of the August Craft Month, which is part of Craft NI. And it's very much a celebration of local craft. And speaking from a Northern Irish point of view, are exceptionally talented makers across a range of craft disciplines. And so this lockdown, this pandemic has allowed this to happen. You know, these kind of new immersive online talks, these kind of celebrations and videos, so that more people from around the globe can be involved in the celebration of Northern Ireland craft. But none of us has been immune to the effects of the pandemic. You talk there about the Stoke-on-Trent factory making your cups. You know, retailers are having to close temporarily, fairs, markets suspended. How do you feel about this? Where do you sit as a craft maker, and what would your advice be for younger craft people coming through?
Well, advice, I don't know, because this is a first one-off, isn't it? All my shows have been cancelled for the whole year. I had work going to America, to, you know, out at sea when we had the lockdown, and things have really changed. And I think we have to adapt. And what I have always said to makers is it's very good to be a part of your local community, you know, for your local community to support you. So if you as an audience, you know of makers around you, wherever you are in the world, you know, do support them directly by finding out if they're okay, finding out if they're selling. If you can afford to buy something and they're not selling, then do that. But I think reaching out to your local community is really important. I just don't know. It's so difficult because the craft fairs are all cancelled. Everything's sort of cancelled. So how do we get our work out there? And I think the social media is our great friend in that respect. I have an Instagram account which is linked to Facebook and Twitter automatically, but Instagram is my leading thing. And I've never sold or wanted to sell anything through Instagram. And at the moment, I don't think I have to. I might have to turn to it, you know, if the COVID comes back in another wave or something. But essentially, I have communicated. And here we are on Zoom, communicating across the world to our community. So when I say reach out to your community, yes, physically reach out and have a garage sale of your work, or media-wise, social media, reach out to our, which is what we're doing here.
We are, yeah, absolutely.
It's speaking up as well. You know, speaking up if you're in trouble, and speaking up, you know, just really communicate. And it's all about communicating. Don't suffer in silence, you makers who are worried. You know, share your worries as well as your pleasures and your joys.
That's a really good point. I think that there's an element of not wanting to let anybody know that you're not doing well. But as you say, it is a community, and you have to you know, have the good times as well as the bad times.
Yes, I have, you know, I'm worried myself. I have a fluctuating set of assistants who've fallen through the government net of assistance. And I'm still employing them, you know, and I've been employing them for the last 4 months, and we're all trying to get their hours down so that we can carry on in that way. But you know, we don't know. And I think it's very important to admit that. Yeah. However, I haven't stopped making, so it's piling up.
Can I also say to everybody watching that Kate and I are going to chat roughly till about 6:30, and then we're going to, I would say whenever we were in the same room together, open the floor. I don't know what you say for Zoom, but for you to send your questions in to Kate, and I will be able to pick them up here through the wonders of technology and pass them to Kate. So probably around 6:30 to 6:45, we would love to hear from you, particularly people who are working in the crafts in various parts of the globe as well. It's really exciting for me personally to be sitting in Belfast, to be, you know, representing Craft NI in these craft and conversations. Just to also let you know that Craft NI is really encouraging people to check out its new online directory and support local makers. Use the hashtag #ISupportNICraft to share how you are getting involved and any of your craft purchases as well. So we have you, Kate Malone MBE, famous lady off the telly. Did you enjoy the Great British Pottery Throw? Did you enjoy that?
Well, it was very hard work, and it's reminding me the heat in my studio. I've shut all the windows because the tractors are ploughing all the fields around my house. So there's dust. So I've shut everything up, and it was hot filming in Stoke-on-Trent through the summer, and I loved it. I mean, really, it's very hard work, and obviously it had its challenges. When they said they were making things, and 3 days later they were firing them, and when I saw the schedule, I said to the production company, this is going to be so full of disaster. How are you going to do it? And really everybody pulled together to an extraordinary extent to reduce the risk. There was jeopardy, of course, and that really showed the problems that we face. But the makers amongst you who've seen it will know that it really communicated the complexities and the pleasures and the joys and the versatility of clay. I was judge with Keith Brymer-Jones in series 1 and 2. And then I stopped at series 2, and Sue Pryke took over as another judge, and they're just about to go into filming for series 4. And the fact was, I don't know about the stats, but when we did series 2, 3.5 million people sat in their living rooms and they watched it, and that was the live watching, not the replays. So we got the joys of ceramics and the drama and passion of ceramics into 3.5 million living rooms, which, was an amazing thing. The BBC had to be credited, for this creative sort of input. It's not with the BBC anymore. That's enough. I can't get involved in talking about that. But essentially, creativity, whether you're making or using something that's creative, is just the most rewarding thing. Somebody who makes something, children who learn how to make things, they should be doing craft. All of you who have children, you should be encouraging your children to understand materials, whether it's wood or metal or plastics or cooking or making bread, because to understand a material makes you a more rounded and able and confident person. So I'm not saying we need to make a whole nation of potters. That would be madness, although it'd be rather fabulous. But I'm saying it's just an enabling and empowering thing to be creative. And so I can't remember what the question was, but I'm just so passionate about this thing, all turn around, all just, sorry, I had a sort of funny juttery sort of thing there.
It's fine. I didn't say anything. No, I'm just marveling at you and your energy. So don't you worry. Can we talk then about what has inspired you in the past and what is inspiring you now?
Yes. Well, my inspiration is nature. My dad says that when I was a little girl, really before I was sort of speaking or walking, he'd see me sort of sitting in the grass and sort of pulling apart a flower or looking at a flower or looking at nature. So I've obviously been really fascinated by it for a long time. And a lot of you who might know my work, and if you go on to my website and link across to my art dealer's website and look at his section of work sold, you'll see that as well as making artichokes and blackberries and big fat pumpkins and really, really literally using nature as a direct inspiration, you'll also see strange geometric crystal modern pieces and pieces with atomic balls on. And essentially that's looking at, although it looks like it might be two different makers, and I don't know if you can see that here today, but you'll definitely see it if you research my work. It's all about nature, whether it's nature under the ground, and that's the crystal geology of nature, 250 miles down into the center of the earth. I think that's how far it is. There's this magma bubbling away and throwing out these extraordinary geometric shapes. And also I use crystalline glazes and grow crystals on the surface of my pots. And also everything's bubbling away. And energy is, energy is like a fizzing, isn't it? Or a drink has gas bubbles in it. It's all about nature itself. So it can be literally nature, all the abstract and more ugly sense of nature. At the moment, I'm quite interested in seeds because I've been in the garden and we planted wildflowers during lockdown. And so a lot of pieces behind here are about seeds and the miracle. If you look up under a microscope or an electron microscope at seeds, they're very fascinating. So I'm looking at that, but I'm also interested in the power or the abstract sense of nature, be that bubbles or cuboid forms and fractured forms. So really, anything goes, really. You know, and I think that's the great thing with ceramics. It is so versatile. This morning, when you brush your teeth, there's clay in your toothpaste. If you have an upset stomach, you drink clay. It settles your stomach. The makeup that you have on your face has got clay in it. And there's a car engine made of clay, and silicon chips in computers are related to clay. And so it's just everywhere. And so I'm very inspired by trying to learn everything new as well about clay. So researching new glazes. 20% of my work is really researching glazes and trying to push the field forward with the chemistry. And yeah, just keeping going, really. It's just, there's not enough hours in the day to sort of follow those things through. But the things I'm interested in, as I have been forever, is nature, and really trying to represent that. And I think the beauty of flowers and the beauty of leaves, you can't replicate that with clay. Or if you do, you'll always be second best. So it's more about the abstract sense of it.
You have got an object there that you've been working on. So, yes.
Oh, that I've been working on? No, this is an object made by somebody else.
Oh, made by somebody else. Ah, good. Okay, because I wouldn't mind looking at something that you've been working on as well. But let's.
No, I can do that. I can. Let me bring over the piece. I'm going to lift it.
I think I'm throwing this at her, actually.
This is actually a soft piece. Look, here it is. So this is, in fact, on Radio 4 this week. There's a program of 15 minutes every morning about the oak tree. It's called the Oak Books, I think. And these are acorns, symbols of strength and stability. And I'm looking at wallpapers, William Morris wallpapers. So there's actually pattern and there's logic in the way these leaves are put on. And I just have to finish the bottom. It's not quite finished yet. And so it's leather hard. If I could poke my nail into it,
yeah.
And it's sort of, you can feel see this leather hard. It's quite cool because it's got water in it.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
And I've had the help of Erica making the acorns, who's from Hungary. And she's made them in North London, put them in a Tupperware box under my strict instructions. We've been working together for 11 years. And I've had the help of Louise press moulding the leaves into little sprig moulds. So I can show you here. And Louise also threw the shape under my drawings and instruction. And then I put them all together. So really, that little piece is probably 36, 70 hours, 80 hours of work, sort of put together in that little piece. So I work as part of a team, or the lead and the conductor of a team, if you like, which is involved.
And then to talk about the financial side of it, that level of work, that level of detail is then what will dictate the price, will it?
Yes, absolutely. And often when I sort of say to people, this piece is £7,000 or something like that, and they sort of go, oh, and I say, well, actually, I think possibly the hours in it are probably half the wages that you'd pay to have your car serviced. You know, the sort of hourly rate or the hours. Of course, I could design something that might cost £50 because it's got a couple of hours in it, or that one which will cost thousands. And really, the great pleasure of using clay is that you can adapt and make simple things and complicated things. The reason that piece is complicated is that I'm keeping my team employed, and I'm hoping in the future I'll be able to sell it. One of the reasons that I've sort of built this sort of little domain, if you like, a sort of there are studios all over London now that my assistants have turned to their own studios to make my work, is because I work in 3 areas of ceramics. I work on the studio pottery that you saw in one of the pictures at the beginning, and you can see that on my Instagram very much. I work on glaze research, which feeds everything that I do, because glazing is one of the most difficult parts of the process, I find. And then I work on public art. So you saw there was a piece in the Children's Library at Brighton, which is an interactive storytelling wall. And the idea was born of me improvising storytelling to my daughter when she was little. And she used to say, Mummy, tell me a story from your throat. And so I'd say, okay, you pick 3 things, Scarlett. And she'd say, here we are, a glass, a biro, and a dustpan and brush. And I used to improvise storytelling with her. And that piece for the library and a couple of other very big pieces that take years to make and teams of people to make are there, and they're used, they're interactive, they're used today. That piece in Brighton with the blue wall with all those symbols all over it, you could improvise 1,000 stories or 10,000 stories from those pieces. And I used to tell her stories to try and make her cross the road more carefully, or brush her teeth, or be kind to others. You know, so it's very much, life is about sort of stories, really. So, yeah.
Let's talk then also then about, because thank you so much for that impromptu look at work in progress, which I'm sure has fantastic for me, but for craft makers across the world watching too. Tell us then about a significant craft object which, you know, means something to you personally, and
Yes.
why it's so important.
You're right. Thank you, Marie-Louise. Because we're only talking for 5 more minutes. I could go on and on, actually, as you can tell, I expect. And really, in my studio, if I sort of twist this a little bit over to these shelves here, when Craft Northern Ireland said, choose something that's affected you, you know, that's like trying to pin something down, because I have hundreds of things that every day I go to a car boot sale and I find something that affects me, you know. So, but one of the things is there's an artist called Axel Salto, who's a Scandinavian fine artist. He's dead now, and he worked in the 20th century, early 20th century, and he worked with Royal Copenhagen to produce a set of pots that he sort of carved and designed, and then Royal Copenhagen glazed them. And I have this piece, which is the tiniest little thing, and his pieces that I was making all my pumpkins and all my blackberries and pineapples and things before I saw his work. But when I did finally see it, and this piece is probably worth about £2,000 or £3,000 on the open market. I paid £375 for it years ago, and it was made in 1937 by Axel Salto. This piece, when I saw it, I felt like he must be my brother or something, because I felt like, well, my clever brother, I should say, because I felt like he was, I suppose Mother Nature is the thing that I aspire towards, or that I'm inspired by. And I think that there's a green man. You often see it in churches, this oak-faced man, which is almost more, not deeper, but more scary or more frightening or more abstract or more brave or more masculine, you might say. And so I felt that he was like the masculine version of that which I chased. And his pieces, and he did big pieces. My objective is, and this is a good note to sort of wind up our talking about, is that when you see a piece of my work, especially the big pumpkins, instead of you thinking that it's lovely, you feel it in the top of your chest, or in the bottom of your, or I suppose in your heart, really. You sort of feel this thing. And there are certain things that do that to me across time. There are Indian things that definitely do that to me. Indian art does. And everybody has different things that push this button inside their guts, if you like. And for me, Axel Salto sort of touches me in a place that that I can't really put into words. Okay. And so, and I have a couple of, there's a couple, one lady in particular who bought a little pumpkin, and she was very posh, really, really posh woman. And she said to me at a show once, you know, I have a pumpkin and I've had it for years. And every day I go into my living room and I open the curtains and I turn around and it just hits me there. And to me, that's, if I can do that occasionally, that's what Axel Salto does to me.
That is wonderful. I love it. I love, it's the energy that you put into the physicality of making something that then it still wallops people when they view it. Well, look, we're gonna. I'm sure there's a much more poetic way of saying it, but I'm going to go for wallop at the moment. Shall we open the floor of Zoom, of the global chat space, to people wanting to ask us questions? Let me see if I can go on to here. Yes. Okay, so first question, this is from an anonymous attendee. How do you advise new artists as the best way to approach galleries?
Well, I think you need, even if you're a new artist, obviously you want to show, you want people to see your work, but you also want to show in the most appropriate place. So I think if you can imagine your work at that gallery, that's the first step. You have to think about it from their side. So is your work appropriate to that place? Don't send your work to places that aren't appropriate. I suppose in a way, if there's a gallery, your work should fill a gap and not be similar to things that are there. But at the same time, I think if you, in the old days, I used to say, write 20 letters to 20 galleries. Of course, they're not letters with a stamp now. They're emails. Yeah. But if you write to 20 galleries with good pictures of your work, you have the work, even if it's brilliant, it's only as good as the photograph.
Okay.
So it's better to have 2 good photographs than 6 bad ones. That's the thing. And also, if you write to 20 or you communicate with 20 galleries, if you get a touch, a sniff, a grain of sand, a sliver of smoke from one of them of interest, then follow it. Don't expect them all to reply, because they don't. You know, you have to try 20 things to get one. Like computer dating, they say you have to have 85 dates to actually meet one person who you quite like. But you know, so
you're likening your work then to computer dating. Okay, Catherine asks, what advice would you give to someone wanting to move her ceramic practice into the field of public art?
Oh, well, okay, so public art is 5% inspiration and 95% perspiration.
Which I'm sorry that you're enduring at the moment because of the heat.
But essentially, you've got to be realistic. And yes, public art can be a mural in a fish and chip shop behind the fat fryer. And of course, it can be the whole facade of a building. So I think I've done maybe 20 public art projects that started out at a budget of £500, or in fact, it was a swap with a butcher for a lot of sausages, through to the latest one, which was £1.5 million for a building on Savile Row that took 4 years, and I had a team of 11 and had to open another studio. I had to form a limited company to protect my family. So it really sort of varies, and start simply. And the first 10 of my 20 projects, I never made really any profit. But the budget allowed me to learn how to do things. So start simply. How do you get a job with public art? You look at AN News, I think is an online newsletter that publicises hospitals and parks and county councils and agencies that are looking for public art, and apply. Of course, you can. They often say you need to send in work that you've done before. And if it's your first public art project, all you can do is show your willingness to do things, or to find an artist who does public art and assist them and learn. It's really hard, public art, because you've got engineering. You know, I put these pieces in Brighton. If one of those pieces was to fall on a child in the children's library, they could die, you know. So I had to work with an engineer on a triple mechanism to hang every single piece. So that if the glue failed, there are bolts that hold it on, and if the bolts fail, there's ropes that hold it on behind. So it really is something where you have to be very practical, and you have to look, again, like the gallery, look at it from the other side. Look at a hospital and think what they need. Often the last thing about public art is that it needs to be site specific. It has to be meaningful to the place. It's not really about the artist. And a lot of times that I've got public art projects is that I'm thinking about the community where it's destined to be, and not about myself. So I'll study the history of an area. I might want it to express. I mean, the story walls are logical. It was for a children's library, and that's where you tell stories. But other things, I've done pieces that have told you about the history of a site through entertainment and through visual communication. So I think, as with everything in life, look at things with empathy of the other side.
Thank you. Question here from Judy Ross. Kate, I know you're wonderfully generous in sharing information about ceramics. I hope that in the near future you will produce a book on crystalline glazes, of which you are a master.
Well,
have you time?
I have to confess, if you ask me what the basic ingredients of a crystalline glaze is, I'd have to turn to my book. It's not in my head because there's so many recipes. But and I do publish a lot of base glazes. And in fact, I started my research from going to visit Derek Clarkson. He's deceased now, a lovely old man who made lots of crystal glazes, and also Emmanuel Cooper's book of recipes. So every glaze has a recipe, and you start with a base recipe and then you develop it for your own needs. And essentially, I do have a directory. Maybe this person has seen it. It's the most incredible. In fact, I'm going to see if I can find it. Give me 30 seconds.
Oh no. Talk among ourselves. We just have a little snoop now and have a look at what we can see in your...
Here it is. So this is my directory, which is in-house. And for all the potters amongst you, this is a book. And all these colours are different base glazes. This has just been found on the internet, so it's only for me at the moment. But these are recipes, and these are the glazes. So this is my palette. And every spine colour is a different base glaze. And the yellow there was the Savile Row Public Art research for the project. And really, this is we call it the Bible. It's a bit sacrilegious, especially in Northern Ireland, making it the... But really, we call this, it's a directory of 30 years of research, which with 2 assistants I pulled together into this volume. And we will publish it eventually.
I was just going to say, how can people get their hands on it? I'm sure there are people salivating now looking at that.
They can't get their hands on it yet.
You can't give away the secrets of your recipes just yet.
Well, I do, you see. This is what I advocate, is that everybody share knowledge. And of course, I share lots of recipes when I have magazine articles. And when people write, I send them base glazes and help them. But my art dealer said, don't publish it yet, not till I'm a bit older. I'm 61, so I've got a little way to go before the flood.
Good. But well, yes, talking about, I suppose, aging and or longevity, more so, maturity in a career. Yes, is there a series of works or work that you are particularly proud of?
The latest piece, really. You know, I try and move forward. Sometimes I look at some things that I made that I think are good in the past, key pieces. I think, is my work as nice as that now? What am I doing? Maybe I should stop. But no, a series of works. The pumpkins, symbols of fertility and fecundity. And they're very much a sort of simple, big thing that, again, hopefully gets you. And I've done many different pumpkins, from huge ones, to little tiny ones. And so I think the pumpkins, inspired by Diego Rivera's drawings of pumpkins I saw in Mexico. But just going really back to Marie-Louise, you know, secrets are not good in academic research. All of you who make glaze recipes, share them, because they're always different, other applications, you know, and I am sort of joking. I do publish my glazes. I can send out basic glazes. People contact me from my website. But our field will only advance by the way we share our information. It's no good taking it to your grave with you. So I'm not going to do that.
Good. In terms of your work and your role, are you glad that you did what you did? I mean, is there a sense that you could have been anything else, or were you always going to work in this particular field?
That's a really good question. Since I was 12 and I made my first piece, and it didn't come out how I wanted it, but I loved it, I'd have absolutely no regrets. I did think I'd be a mother of many children. I have one child, she's 23. And so my assistants are my family as well in that respect. But I have absolutely no regrets. Only that I'm a bit selfish with my time. I'm addicted to, so possibly my family suffer a bit because I'm addicted to my field. And I think you only really, with real application, advance, you know, your own work. And you do have to apply yourself and sacrifice certain things. But no, I wouldn't change it for the world. I just want to keep going forever. That's the only little problem.
And what's exciting you right now? What What are you looking at? You said that about the wildflowers. I mean, I'm similar. I've really turned, and I've been lucky to have had a space out the back, a garden, even though our weather in Northern Ireland hasn't been great. But there's a love. It's wonderful, and I've been planting wildflower seeds as well. And I get that sense of just trying to reconnect with nature and finding great comfort in that. Do you still have that feeling when you go into your studio? It's not a job, it's still something that you're doing, that you're creating.
It's kind of therapy, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, hopefully it's constructive therapy. And you know, I think creativity is it's a great honor to be part of a creative continuum. And things that I'm just loving are seeds and bulbs. The fact that you get a tulip bulb or a dahlia bulb, a dahlia bulb, such an ugly thing. Well, it's not ugly, it's beautiful. I think it's like an old potato, actually. But you know, the things that come out in one season, it's just miraculous. Before we finish, I've got one thing that it's really important to me, because I work my own work. It's all about me. You know, it's not about me. It's about enabling people to do things. And we're going to be launching a project called Fired Up 4. And I've asked 30 of England's top makers to give a piece of work weighing 3 kilos, using 3 kilos of clay, to give a piece. And we're going to launch it on my Instagram in September at London Craft Week. And we're going to auction all these pieces with the objective of building studios in after-school clubs that are built on the margins of residential estates where there really are the most vulnerable and marginalised children in our society. There are already 14 centres in England. They're beautiful centres, privately built, that cost £8 million each, that offer mostly sports and music activity to young people after school, and a hot meal, because some people are lacking that at home. And essentially we're trying to raise money to put kilns and potters' wheels and staff into these centres. And so all of you do look out, because there are all these beautiful pieces by great makers. They've given the most beautiful pieces. They're being auctioned in November, and it'll be out there on my Instagram and all their Instagrams, I hope. So if there are any collectors out there, you know, please keep your eyes open, because we are trying to do that and get ceramic facilities. Would I be a potter if I hadn't had it at school? I don't think so. I might have been a teacher or a nurse. You know, I like looking after people, but I don't think I'd be doing what I do. So we have to try and get it out there to as many people as possible.
Kate Malone, MBE. It has been an absolute pleasure talking to you. There's so much more to talk about. We've got you the ambassador for the charity Onside Youth Zones. I know a little bit about what you're talking there. It goes into that. You have been a joy to talk to for the last 45 minutes. Thank you to everybody watching. Thank you to Craft NI. For more information and to explore more events and activities, visit www.craftni.org, and I'll be back this time next week for another Craft in Conversation. So do please share the word at the moment. But for the moment, before we go, can we do one more hooray for clay? You start it. You start it.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Hooray
for clay! Kate Malone, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you
so
much.
Bye.
Thank you, Marie-Louise.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.